There are moments in sports that transcend the game itself, becoming cultural phenomena. Some plays are remembered for their brilliance, others for their sheer absurdity. And then, there's the Butt Fumble, arguably the most embarrassing single play in NFL history. It wasn't just a blooper, it was a metaphor, a symbol of a franchise lost in dysfunction, forever tied to the struggles of the New York Jets. This is the story of how one play encapsulated an era of mediocrity, how it became the ultimate internet meme, and why, even over a decade later, it still haunts the legacy of the franchise. The New York Jets, led by quarterback Mark Sanchez, were hosting their bitter division rivals, the New England Patriots, in a primetime showdown. The Jets weren't exactly a powerhouse at this point, but there was still hope that they could make something of their season. Just a couple of years prior, they had been in back-to-back AFC championship games under head coach Rex Ryan. That version of the Jets had swagger, confidence, a relentless defense that kept them competitive even when their offense was pedestrian. But by 2012, that identity was fading. The team's once vaunted defense had lost some of its bite, and their offensive struggles were growing more pronounced. The once promising ground-and-pound philosophy that Rex Ryan had built his team around was failing to produce results. Injuries, inconsistent quarterback play, and a lack of elite talent on offense had the Jets spiraling. Fans, who had experienced the highs of deep playoff runs just a few years prior, were growing restless. Mark Sanchez, the former 5th overall pick in the 2009 NFL Draft, was now in his 4th season as the Jets starter. Initially, he had shown promise, guiding the team to 2 AFC title games in his first 2 years. But in 2011, the cracks in his game had started to show. His decision-making, always a concern, became more erratic. His confidence seemed shaken, and his inability to elevate the offense became painfully clear. The 2012 season was supposed to be a redemption year, a chance for Sanchez to prove he was still the quarterback of the future. Instead, he had become a lightning rod for criticism. The addition of backup quarterback Tim Tebow only added fuel to the fire, as fans and media alike debated whether Sanchez should even remain the starter. Through 10 games, the Jets had stumbled to a 4-6 record, clinging to fading playoff hopes. On the other side, the Patriots, a dynasty in full swing. Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, a machine of a team that had tormented the Jets for years. New England had dominated the AFC East for over a decade, and the Jets had only been able to disrupt that dominance in brief spurts. Even when the Jets did manage to defeat the Patriots, like in the 2010 playoffs, it felt like an anomaly rather than a shift in power. The Patriots entered the Thanksgiving matchup as heavy favorites, sitting atop the division with a 7-3 record. Their offense, spearheaded by Brady and an elite supporting cast that included Wes Welker and Rob Gronkowski, was a well-oiled machine. Meanwhile, their defense, though not elite, was more than capable of handling an offense as limited as the Jets. The Jets had their backs against the wall. It was a must-win game, not just for playoff hopes, but for pride. Rex Ryan's squad needed to prove they could still compete with the best in the league, and Sanchez, in particular, was playing for his job. This was a chance for redemption, a moment to turn their season around. The stage was set for a humiliating night. But no one could have predicted just how bad it would get. Midway through the second quarter, the Jets were already trailing 14-0. They desperately needed a spark, something to stop the bleeding. Instead, they got the butt fumble. On a first down play from their own 31-yard line, Sanchez took the snap. It was supposed to be a simple handoff. But confusion struck. His running back had gone the wrong way. Panicked, Sanchez improvised. He tucked the ball and ran straight ahead, hoping to salvage something out of the broken play. And then, it happened. Sanchez sprinted directly into the backside of his own offensive lineman, right guard Brandon Moore. He didn't just brush into him, he collided face-first into Moore's rear end, causing him to instantly lose control of the football. The impact was so forceful, it looked like a scripted comedy sketch. The ball shot out of Sanchez's grasp like a loose bar of soap, bouncing helplessly onto the turf. As the ball tumbled to the ground, Patriots safety Steve Gregory scooped it up and waltzed into the end zone for a defensive touchdown. The entire sequence lasted only seconds, but it would live on forever. The Jets' offensive line stood frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend the sheer absurdity of what had just unfolded. MetLife Stadium fell into stunned silence. Fans buried their faces in their hands, some in disbelief, others in pure embarrassment. The broadcast booth, manned by legendary commentators, struggled to process what they had just witnessed. "Did that really just happen?" one announcer muttered, almost in shock. On the Patriots sideline, players and coaches could barely contain their laughter. Even Bill Belichick, notorious for his stoic demeanor, cracked a smirk. And in living rooms across the country, millions of fans instantly knew they had just seen something unforgettable. The play was replayed endlessly on broadcasts, slowed down frame by frame as analysts broke down every hilarious detail. Some fans recorded it on their phones just to watch it over and over again. It wasn't just a fumble. It wasn't just an embarrassing moment. It was the Butt Fumble, a play so ridiculous, so disastrous, that it defied belief. To make matters worse, this was not just a one-time blunder in an otherwise close game. No, this was merely the catalyst for an all-out implosion by the Jets. Just moments later, on the very next kickoff, Jets returner Joe McKnight fumbled the ball, and the Patriots recovered for another immediate touchdown. In a span of 52 seconds, the Jets had gone from being down 14-0 to trailing 28-0. The game was still in the second quarter, but the outcome felt inevitable. The Jets had completely unraveled, and there was no coming back. As if the universe had conspired against them, everything that could possibly go wrong did. Fans who had tuned in for a competitive primetime game instead witnessed a slow-motion disaster that would be replayed for years to come. The Butt Fumble wasn't just a humiliating blunder, it was a metaphor for everything that had gone wrong with the Jets organization. A team that had once been on the brink of the Super Bowl had now become the laughingstock of the league. The play itself lasted mere seconds, but its impact would last a lifetime. The Butt Fumble was more than just a turnover. It was the defining moment of a franchise in freefall. The Jets completely unraveled after that play. Within a span of just 52 seconds, they allowed 3 Patriots touchdowns, turning a manageable 14-0 deficit into an unfathomable 35-0 nightmare. Fans in the stadium began booing mercilessly. Many left their seats in disgust. Others just laughed, because what else could they do? Some simply stood there, mouths agape, unable to process what they had just witnessed. It wasn't just a single play gone wrong, it was an unraveling in real time, a surreal moment of collective disbelief. But while the game itself was a disaster, the Butt Fumble took on a life of its own. Within minutes, it was viral. Social media exploded with jokes, GIFs, and memes. Twitter users flooded the timeline with reactions, some genuinely shocked, others reveling in the sheer absurdity. ESPN's Not Top 10 highlight reel, reserved for the most embarrassing plays in sports, quickly crowned it the undisputed number 1. It was replayed endlessly, dissected from every possible angle. People who didn't even watch football were talking about it. Late-night talk shows made fun of it. Even non-sports outlets like CNN and Time magazine covered the absurdity of it all. The play transcended sports. It became a cultural phenomenon. But the most brutal insult? The play kept winning. For 40 straight weeks, ESPN's Not Top 10 segment ranked the Butt Fumble as the worst sports moment of the week. Fans had the chance to vote for the most embarrassing moment every Friday, and every single week, the Butt Fumble reigned supreme. The network had to retire the clip, because nothing else stood a chance. Even years later, whenever ESPN revisited its Worst Plays of All Time segment, the Butt Fumble would inevitably make an appearance, still reigning supreme as the undisputed king of sports bloopers. Mark Sanchez became forever linked to the moment. No matter what he did for the rest of his career, he would always be the guy from the Butt Fumble. Every interview, every public appearance, every attempt to move past it, inevitably, that question would come up. He tried to laugh it off, and to his credit, he handled it with good humor. But deep down, he had to know, no matter how many games he won, no matter how much analysis he provided as a broadcaster, he would always be tethered to that one fateful play. And for the Jets, the Butt Fumble wasn't just an embarrassing moment. It was a symbol of their dysfunction, their inconsistency, and their inability to rise above mediocrity. Even as years passed and the roster changed, the shadow of that play loomed large, a cautionary tale of what happens when a franchise loses its way. The Butt Fumble was just a symptom of a larger problem. It symbolized everything that was wrong with the Jets at the time: poor coaching, lack of preparation, and an organization stuck in a perpetual cycle of mediocrity. Sanchez was benched later that season. The Jets would go on to finish 6-10, missing the playoffs for the second consecutive year. The franchise was lost, and the Butt Fumble became the defining lowlight of a team that couldn't get out of its own way. It wasn't just a bad play, it was an encapsulation of a franchise that had seemingly forgotten how to win. From ownership to management to coaching, dysfunction was evident in every aspect of the organization. In the years that followed, things didn't get much better. The Jets cycled through coaches, quarterbacks, and front office personnel, but the stench of the Butt Fumble lingered. It became a running joke. Whenever the Jets made a bad play, someone would inevitably bring up that night in 2012. Even during games that had nothing to do with that infamous moment, television broadcasts would flash replays of the blunder, and commentators would chuckle at the mention of it. The franchise's struggles continued well into the next decade. After Sanchez, the team experimented with a carousel of quarterbacks, from Geno Smith to Ryan Fitzpatrick, from Sam Darnold to Zach Wilson, each failing to deliver long-term stability. Coaching hires came and went, yet the culture of mediocrity remained. Every time a new regime promised change, the same mistakes resurfaced. The Butt Fumble had become more than just a singular disaster. It had become the embodiment of a team that couldn't escape its own futility. Even as the team showed signs of life in recent years, trying to rebuild under a new regime, the ghosts of the Butt Fumble still loom large. Whenever the Jets approach relevancy, there's a collective hesitation, a lingering fear that somehow, someway, they will find a way to collapse once again. Fans still flinch at the memory of that fateful night, dreading the possibility of another moment that could rival it in sheer embarrassment. Until the Jets can build sustained success, the Butt Fumble will remain a haunting reminder of the darkest era in franchise history. To his credit, Mark Sanchez has handled the aftermath as well as anyone could. He's embraced the joke, often laughing about it in interviews and on social media. He's even worked in sports media, analyzing games for ESPN and Fox Sports, showing that he can take it all in stride. But no matter how much time passes, no matter how many quarterbacks come and go for the Jets, the Butt Fumble will always be part of his legacy. Some plays define greatness. Others define disaster. The Butt Fumble. It's eternal. It isn't just the worst play in NFL history. It's the moment that sums up years of Jets dysfunction in a single, hilarious, slow-motion train wreck. It's a cautionary tale, a comedy classic, and a living meme, all rolled into one. And even decades from now, when new fans discover it for the first time, one thing will remain true. It will still be absolutely hilarious.